Good morning, everyone. Welcome in Betsperts Golf. We gotta get some new stuff here. We got the artwork, we got the DFS, the Texas Open still here. We're gonna upgrade that. I got Colin Morikawa on the thumbnail this week. He's not even in the event. Apologize. He did well last year when he was here. So Ryan Noonan here, solo today, walking you through a betting preview. I really want to walk through modeling this morning. I'm going to model out using the rabbit hole here, our officially licensed PGA Tour database at Betsperts Golf to help. Hopefully, if you haven't made any bets at this week's Rocket Mortgage yet, we're going to help you do so. It is obviously, I think the term modeling is a little bit intimidating to people, and we want to show you how easy it is to do so. And we try to do that on all the shows. Try to do that on the Monday morning first look show with Ron, PGA Splits 101. Andy and I typically do it here as well. And we like to get into a little bit of a course preview and some of those other things as well. But hopefully just people understand the power of the rabbit hole and how easy it is to use advanced analytics, filtering advanced analytics in a way that can help hopefully make things a little bit easier for you, a little bit more enjoyable when you're, on the weekend, maybe on the couch, wanting to watch or sweat a little bit of golf or something like that. I think this is a little bit easier than people think in terms of what the term modeling is. So I'm going to walk through that with you guys today, hopefully make that a little bit easier. I'm going to try to replicate the model that I built over the weekend for this event. It's helped guide my betting card for the event, and we'll walk through that here as well. So hopefully that's something that can be helpful to you. And, maybe something you want to check out. Obviously, there are, term and modeling is typically designed for, a very specific type of person who's way smarter than me, but we've tried to dumb it down for even people like myself to make it very, very easy for you to take some data, understand how a course is going to play, try to understand how, using our content and maybe other content in the space, try to understand what's going to matter that week for an event, and then use that data to kind of hone in on the type of golfers that you want to look at this week. So hopefully help you out by taking a look at some of that this morning. So first, want to let you know, you can get a great look at Ron's preview here, the Rocket Mortgage Classic, broken down here over at Betsperts Golf. Definitely want you to check that out. I would go toe-to-toe with Ron's preview with anyone out there on this, in the space. Fantastic preview. Definitely want you to check that out. But let's get into it. Detroit, there's really no way to sugarcoat things here. We have a weaker field than normal for the PGA Tour event, especially what we've had of late, because, we've had, obviously we had a string of, basically bookended signature events around the U.S. Open. So you had the top tier playing. And that is not the case. Kind of a natural bye week here. The next couple of weeks are too. We have Detroit here, Rocket Mortgage. We have the John Deere Classic next week before we go overseas. We have the Scottish Open heading into the Open Championship, the final major of the year at Troon. So kind of a natural bye week for folks. You saw that. It made sense when Rory backed out last week at the Travelers that we weren't going to see him for a couple of weeks because he wasn't coming to Detroit. He's not going to the Quad Cities to go to the John Deere. Same with Scotty. We're not going to see Scotty till the Open. Kind of natural bye week for these guys that have had a serious run of golf. Tom Kim doesn't care. It's going to be 9 events in a row. He's teeing it up here this week in Detroit, and it is. Ron's got his boots on the ground there too. This is right in Ron's neck of the woods. There is no way to sugarcoat it. It is going to be a birdie fest. There is nothing really to punish bad shots. Even what separates it here a little bit is supposedly the greens and some of the undulation. Even that's kind of gone awry. Like you got to be on the right side or the right tier to be able to make some putts because you have to score. These are wide fairways. It's Parkland tree line in style, but driver heavy, kind of middle of the pack in terms of length. Par 72 stretched out to just under 7,400 yards. So in these spots where, even a weaker field, these are professional golfers. They're all really good. They have nothing that's preventing them from going driver off the tee, and the thick rough not very thick yet based off of what we're seeing from Ron being there, and has really not deterred previous iterations of this event where you've seen people. I mean, this is kind of your prototypical bomb and gouge. You can just kind of let it rip. If you happen to miss the fairway, you're so close to be able to take a wedge and be able to get yourself in a scoring position. So we have seen a wide array of golfers win here, but the more guys come, we just see an added advantage by having that length, because again, you're giving yourself a shorter, be able to hold even from the rough, be able to hit the ball higher, be able to hold the greens, even though you won't be able to spin it as much as you would want from the fairways. And again, finding the fairways, not very difficult. Now we go to the 3M in the Twin Cities, and they kind of similar, like in terms of like when they came into rotation on tour and things like that. But like at least the TBC Twin Cities has some blow up holes. You have water on that course. You have some threat of danger. We just don't have a lot of bogeys out here in Detroit. So again, you need scoring typically, and I'll see it when we do the modeling. I don't usually do a lot in terms of modeling with putting. This week, man, we got to look at it. We have to look at it in a few different ways, and it has to be weighed heavy in terms of where we typically are. I feel like sticky stats like strokes gained tee to green, ball striking, approach, all those things that we typically do still matter. But typically we don't look at putting, because putting, not that we don't look at putting, but putting gets weighed a little bit less because it just tends to be a more variant, because grass types can matter for certain guys. And at the end of the day, if you're giving yourself more looks through the more sticky, predictable stats like tee to green play, ball striking, approach, you're going to put yourself in positions to score. That's going to kind of weigh itself out in the end. Here, you just can't get cute. Like you have to be able to be a guy that can run it up into the low to mid 20s if you're going to win here, because that's what's required. So we'll have to look at some putting splits, some birdie or better stuff. We'll look at that here. We'll see if the rough gets grown out as the week goes on, but as of right now, not a super concern. There are 4 par 5s on this track. They are among the easiest on tour. Last couple of years, we have a birdie or better rate of 43.4% on the par 5s. So I'm almost not even looking at par 5 scoring, because it's like, I don't know, maybe we can look at it, but everyone gets there and everyone's scoring. There's one par 5 that's a little bit longer that maybe is a 3-shot hole for some guys, but you got to make your way on the par 4s here. There are 4 of the 10 are under 400 yards. And the bogey rate's super low. So, you're losing shots to the field, definitely with bogeys here, but even pars in some of these, because the birdie opportunities need to kind of roll in here a ton. So, you talked about bombers. We have Bryson here before. This is we had these, Bryson, Matt Wolff showdowns. And this is one of them too, when these first came back on tour. And look, we've seen Finau play well. Taylor Pendrith hits it a mile. Cam Young, runner-up here in 2022. He's in the field again this week. Again, the average fairway width here is over 35 yards. That is the 10th widest on tour. Again, no real water, very few like penal fairway bunkers. This is just head cover off, blasting down the fairway. 78% of the drives here last year were hit over 280 yards. That's telling us that this is a driver-heavy course. Again, that extra length, you need to make up for it. So, obviously a unique place, as we talked about the scoring. This is actually a difficult place to gain on the greens because of the undulation there too. But 40% of the strokes gained on this course have come with the putter over the last couple of years. That is about 5 to 6% above tour average. So yeah, you got to be able to putt here. We'll get into that here. We'll start to model some of the key stats that I want to look at this week, and some of the ways that we can do that specifically with the rabbit hole. We'll look at some easy scoring conditions. Obviously talked about driving distance mattering. I want to look at situations where the ball striking has been good when you were in a driver heavy situation. And when there's the very little missed fairway penalty. And these are things that we could do through the rabbit hole, which again, can sound intimidating, but we want to show you how easy that is today. Obviously birdies. We want to see how you're putting. This is, again, a combination similar to what we saw last week at Travelers, where we have that POA, but not your West Coast POA, that like POA Triv mix, bent mix. So I want to look at kind of all those like POA, bent, POA Triv, because that's kind of the closest of what we have here this week, and see some of the performances on those tracks for guys over the last couple of years. So if you were hanging out, we appreciate it. Jump in the chat. Let me know who you like this week in Detroit. I'm going to share screen here and start to get into some of the modeling of it at all. Let me know who you like. Subscribe to the channel. DFS show coming up on Wednesday. Ron, PGA Splits 101, Byron, the Model Maniac, dig into the field. Interesting week. Obviously, I think there's just a lot more opportunity when we don't have the Scotty Schefflers in the world, especially when we're trying to make outright bets, or if we're looking to build DFS lineups. Like, man, just I think looking at ownership and being unique there is going to be a big thing this week. So check out what the guys do there over on the DFS show on Wednesday. All right. Let's take a look at the odds board here real quick. Let's see what shifted here since we've opened before we jump into this. So if you're just coming to this for the first time and get familiar with who is at the top of the board, courtesy of our friends over at the lines. We appreciate having this all on the one screen. We can take a look at who's here and what to expect. All right. Tom Kim, as I mentioned, continues. We had a Tom Kim 60 last week. He gave us a good sweat, basically wire to wire. And Sky Scheffler was good at golf and took care of business there. But Tom Kim again teeing it up 12-1. Cam Young, as mentioned, Cam went absolutely nuclear over the weekend of the Travelers and could not get it home. Obviously, he was just kind of working too far back, but I think a pretty popular click so far. You can see here 14, 16s out there as well. Min Woo Lee, people love to bet on Min Woo Lee. There were 22s yesterday. You can see we're drifting now down. 20s are the best on the board. 18s have already kind of populated in the market. Akshay Bhatia. Bhatia was in the mix, obviously, all week, and got himself in that final group on Sunday. 20s, 22s out there. Steven Yeager's gotten shorter. Taylor Pendrith has gotten shorter as well from open. Definitely interesting to see where those prices have moved to. Alex Noren. You can see 28's available on Noren. Been playing really good golf. Matt McNeely. 28s across the board. Again, another number that has shrunk, has been a popular click, it appears. Aaron Rye down there at 30. Can Aaron Rye make enough putts? It's a question I think needs to be asked. Davis Thompson, a guy that people want to continue to bet on. They think is ascending, has been playing some good golf. Keith Mitchell is going to model well. We'll probably see that here. Zalatoris, it's probably, catching some off guard. Zalatoris just, probably definitely towards the top of the class of this field. Can he make enough birdies? And you got to make birdies here, right? Typically, we've like Zal, tougher tracks, mid to low teens, probably scoring has kind of been where Zal's made his bread and butter since turning pro. Do I want Zal in a spot where I need to get to 25 or low 20s? Probably not. And I think that's showing itself here on the board, just where he is compared to the skill set versus the other players here. Bobby Mack, Ricky, defending champ. So it kind of rounds out again. We can float down, but let's build some models here. Let's kind of take a look at this. So again, if you're seeing this for the first time, pretty simple. You have the displays, the fields on Friday evenings. When the next field gets announced, you'll be able to look at the upcoming week field. So on Friday night, you want to look at the John Deere. Your Rocket Mortgage week's not going so well. You'll be able to look at that here. You can mess around with previous seasons, multiple seasons, whatever you want to do through the seasons bucket there. The views, this obviously starts off on our strokes gains page, but you can look at all these different views in terms of looking at statistical buckets, which is really, really cool to be able to look at all these different things. Lots of unique stats that you will not be able to find anywhere else other than the PGA Tour's site, but to be able to add conditions to it, to be able to add it and weight it to a model, stats that you won't be able to do that anywhere else. Time frame works in conjunction here with this all rounds bar. You can move around to kind of play around with the time frame of your data set, which is super important. You can look at course region. If you want to look specifically here, like we're looking at the Midwest, you can look at that. If you want to look specifically at, Michigan courses, you can do that. Obviously, you're going to be narrowing down your your data set to a pretty small sample. Not necessarily something that I would advise often, but you have the option to look, especially, this is a good application when we're, maybe in the UK, where, the style of golf tends to be more common. You can do that with, the California West Coast swing. You can see, you can look just here at Midwest in general. So it's going to kind of capture, more than just Michigan. You're going to have, obviously, the John Deere. You're going to be able to grab even last year's BMW. If you think there's some sort of commonality link between the two, you could be able to do all that here too. The course type, like you said, this is a Parkland style course. If you want to look at, ocean courses, mountain courses, link style, islands, where you're going to get, more wind, you can look at all the TPC tracks. You're going to have all that here in the course type as well. You want specific course? You want to look at Detroit specifically, or anything? You have some sort of, a list of corollary courses that you like, select all of them and take a look at how players have performed on the corollary courses there as well. And you make sure you're doing some of this stuff. You want to mess around with the time frame as well. You don't want, if you're looking at just the last 6 months, when you add a bunch of courses, you're not going to get all the data, because maybe those events happened in September of last year, and you're not going to be able to get that in the data. So you want to mess around with the time frame and go back a little bit further there too. I can see salaries are listed here next to the player. That is their DraftKings salary for DFS purposes. If you play on FanDuel as well, God bless, that option is here for you as well. Some other cool things, you can download any of these stats into a CSV. If you are familiar with this, you play around on Excel and you want to kind of create your own models, make sub-models, weigh them differently, and do all of those other things, you can download any of these into a CSV, which is a awesome feature. If you want to see our staff's ratings, or other folks in the industry that use the rabbit hole, you can do that here as well. You can see here, see Ron Kloss, PGA Splits 101. Here's his Rocket Mortgage model. Andy Lack has a couple here. Andy Lack of Inside Golf Podcast, one of the best preview podcasts out there in the space. You can see Andy's model and give you a couple first run through that he did over the weekend. And then this looks like something that he did yesterday. So a second model, you want to see the stats that he looked at. Same thing, Matt Vicenzi, Tapping In podcast. Matt's been, on a heater all year without rights, doing good stuff. He's Inside Golf Podcast as well. You want to see the stats that, Matt or Andy are using. You want to see their models, right? Do you want the answers to the test? Like, you can look there too. Also, I really suggest that you kind of build your own. Look at the stats that they added. Look at the conditions that they put on there. Look at how they weighed things. And then be able to go from there. I think it's just the process. I think will make your understanding of the game, what you're looking for, better, and you can kind of hone it in and get better and better each week. I think it's a really cool, unique way to go about this. So, all right, I'm going to take myself off so I'm not in the way and blocking anything. You don't need to see my ugly mug anyway. Can find my mouse. There we go. Get rid of my face. All right. Some of the other things really we're going to get in here too. This filter by condition section, guys, you can look at a lot of different things. There are so many conditions, and this can be very intimidating. I'd be very careful adding more than like one or two to three, depending how they correlate at a time. When you start to add a bunch of different things, so you'll read our content. Like, I just gave you some of my top key stats of the week. You'll read Ron at the bottom of his course preview. He'll put what he thinks are the key stats for the week. If you start to like click on all of those collectively and see what it spits out, like, all right, this is going to be easy scoring. I told you it's kind of like average to short in terms of length. And we know it's a weak field. And it's going to be driver heavy. The rough length is kind of like average to long. And, there's no real penalty for a missed fairway. You start to click all these things, your data set is going to be very wonky, very small, not something that is going to be useful for you, because you're basically trying to replicate last year. Just go look at last year's leaderboard if that's what you're trying to actually replicate. I would look at these in smaller subsets and then change how you weigh them and what their impact is going to be on the week, if that makes sense. You can see, wind, who plays well in wind gusts of 19 plus. Like, there's a lot of stuff in here that is can be intimidating. And if you're not careful, the data set that you're going to be pulling the sample is going to be super duper small. You can check that too here by looking at the number of rounds played, right? So what we're looking at right now is just a baseline, what this defaults to when you open it up. So this is just all rounds played over the last 6 months for the guys in this field. And you'll see there's some guys in here that have some pretty small samples. You can see Kevin Chway has not played as much as, Steven Yeager. You'll get some real small stuff. Bryce Garnett. You got my guy, Michael Thorbornson in this field. You're not going to have many rounds at all, right? Luke Clayton, 4 rounds. Like there's just not a lot of stuff here that matters, for that. That's very, very, very noisy. So what you can do is put a minimum round feature right here to make sure you kind of take out some of the smaller samples of guys, just to make sure that data set gets interesting. So when you mess around and add it, you'll see here, okay, if I overfit all these guys that have been playing 60 rounds this year, like Cam Young has, all of a sudden I'm only getting like 13 rounds. I probably have like a weird data set, and I probably want, actually more data. This defaults to ranking of where they rank in each category. You can look at their average performance in each category, their total number of strokes gained, or the percentage of rounds gained as well, which I think is very useful. Around like consistency, if you happen to play like cash for DFS, or you're betting like a T40 or T30 or stuff like that, like I think those things are super duper impactful to look at how consistent someone is. Albert wants to know what ID is Ron's expert pick under. If you go here into expert rankings, you want to see Ron's. This is Ron Kloss. This is Ron's model. If you want to see Ron's. Ron and I did one there in our first look show yesterday on our first preview on Monday morning. We always do that on Monday mornings, 9 Eastern AM on Mondays. Come hang out with us here on the Betsperts Golf YouTube page if you want to watch that. If you want to see Ron's final rabbit hole model, that's there. Subscribers know that Ron puts out a ton of sub models and all that stuff, round by round stuff. All that goes in the Discord for subscribers. So you want to get all of the Ron data, all of the content and all the sub models and stuff like that. You need to get into Discord for subscribers, and that's where all that lives. All right, let's get into this. Let's start to build some stuff out. I want to replicate what I did for the model and lead you guys to where my bets are for the week and see if it makes some sense to you. All right. First, I want to take a look at let's look at baseline performance. I'm not going to put any filters on. We'll just look here. Last 6 months, we're getting a decent sample. I'll put a smaller little, minimum round feature on for some of these guys, but who's playing well? Who's playing well the last 6 months? We're going to take a look at that here. So this is what I'm defaulting to. Strokes gains right here. When you hit this little add button, a little plus, it brings up this description box. You can put something here if you'd like. No need to. Totally up to you. I like it for the sake of the description. When I get into everything else, it lets me know what it was, because when they start to look at it, I'll have a bunch of things that are strokes gained total or ball striking or whatnot. Having the note really helps. All right, last 6 months, strokes gained total. Who's playing well? Typically in this set, this is what Andy and I would call like an anchor stat. Just like, all right, who is playing well? I don't want to have where so many like subsets where I'm not actually like trying to get a like high level understanding of who's playing really good golf. So I think that this is a really important ad. Albert, again, I appreciate it. Really enjoying this. It helps a great deal with building a model. Love it. That's why we're doing it. So appreciate that, Albert. All right, that's my one of my starter baseline subsets. Who's playing well overall? Let's look recent. Let's get some recent form here. Who's playing well? Let's say over the last 16 rounds. So again, I'm looking at the last 6 months, but again, all I'm actually looking for is within that time frame, the last 16 rounds of someone playing, who is just coming in with decent form. And this makes sense here, right? Bobby Mack, Tom Kim, Matt McNeely, Davis Thompson, Matt Wallace, Aaron Rai, Minwoo Lee, Keith Mitchell, Akshay Bhatia, Taylor Pendrith are your top 10 last 4 events for the most part, right? If you make the cut, who is playing well in that time frame. So again, how we weigh this will matter at the end. It's not as important as some other things, but I think I want to be able to capture who's coming in playing well right now. That's going to help me a little bit too. So last 16, I'm going to add that as well. All right, now we're going to get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty. Right, let's take a look at some of the unique stuff that we could do with the rabbit hole. And these are going to be a little bit easier, a little bit more important for me. I want to look at who's playing well or who has thrived in easy scoring conditions. That's what we have this week. Scoring conditions are not difficult, and who can hang when that's kind of the ask. And that's what we have this week. So we'll go into the filter by conditions section. I'm going to back this up to all rounds. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to look at easy and very easy. I basically want to take out, because this is not an average spot and definitely not difficult. So this is going to eliminate all that. You could also say this is a weak field or a very weak field. That's fine. I don't really mess around with field strength, to be honest. It's not a condition that I mess around with. I know Ron likes it. That's okay. That's part of the beauty of this. There are, I say, so many ways to skin the cat. That's why, getting the ability to look at multiple views, multiple models, I think is really, really helpful. To me, adding field strength is kind of double counting and a little bit more subjective. So for me, I'm going to go just with the scoring conditions. All right. So I'm going to add that. Now you can see instantly where now my rounds played over the last 6 months is a really small sample. 19 rounds played is not really a useful data set, in my opinion. I want a larger view, especially when I get into this subset of data, which is what I have here. You could see this is where these little things are, scoring conditions here. These are your filters that are on. So I want to back up. Let's look at the last 2 years in these scenarios, who is playing well. And this is giving me to me, this is a useful data set. I'm getting, north of 40 rounds for most of these guys. I'm going to put a filter on that's going to take out some of the smaller stuff, some of the guys that don't play as often or aren't in the mix. I don't want someone getting massively bumped up in the model for, just say, 14, 16 rounds played. All right. Last 2 years, easy scoring conditions, very easy scoring conditions. Tom Kim, Eric Cole, Steven Yeager, Cam Davis, Alex Noren are your top 5. You can see some of the names right here below if you're hanging out on YouTube. If you're listening in podcast form, I apologize. I'm trying to make this as easy to listen to as possible. But at the same time, it's, model building and showing this on the screen here on YouTube. Find our channel, Betsperts Golf, and, watch it back. I think it's going to be a more useful exercise for you. But I apologize. We're trying to make it as podcast friendly as possible. We appreciate the podcast listens too. I also want to add this. I think this is a really important stat. This is telling me, and I want total. I want strokes gained total. I don't want strokes gained tee to green. I don't want ball striking. I want to capture the scoring element of it as well. And the strokes gained total has putting in it versus tee to green just being, as it says, what happens until you get to the green. So strokes gained total over the last 2 years, easy scoring. This one matters. It's an important one this week. All right. So let's see what's next. I want to look at, we're going to go off the tee. Again, the penalty for missing the fairway here basically doesn't exist. And guys are going to be taking driver out based off of, the average driving distance here being significantly longer than the tour average. So that tells us that guys are just pounding away without any real concern. Again, water on one hole, no real penal fairway bunkers, rough, just does not seem to be a deterrent for these guys. So I want to capture that. I think it's really important to understand who can play well in the scenarios where they don't have to club down, don't have to play positional golf, aren't having to think about, okay, I want to be on this side of the fairway. I could just rip it down there as far as possible. I'll try to get the highest lofted second shot that I can get to get a scoring chance. So that's what we're going to do. So I want to take off these conditions. You can hit reset all or click them out individually, up to you. But important because obviously, unless you get rid of this, every other thing you're looking at is within the same context of previous conditions. All right, let's look here. We'll go back in. I want to look at scrolling down off the tee club, driver heavy. Really cool feature. Again, you cannot do this anywhere else. This is something that our guy Ron does by hands by classifying this. So based off of, the data that we can get from the PGA Tour, some of that public, some of it not. And then just, looking at things like, average driving distance. Those are things that are accessible that we have access to that can help make this, I think, a really, really cool, unique set that you can't find anywhere else. So, all right, we're looking at off the tee driver heavy, and the missed fairway penalty, non-existent. So we're going to go low. I'm also going to include average because I just want to eliminate spots where it's high. I worry that the low only data set is a little bit small. So I'm going to include average because in combination with driver heavy, right? I have to think through this. What am I actually trying to tell? What am I trying to get data wise? And I think this captures that. So I'm eliminating high missed fairway penalty. You can get into theoretically rough penalty being high. I just don't believe that the case. That's what they're going to tell you is the defense of the course is that they're going to grow this rough out to 4 inches or more. It just hasn't been how it's played out. Ron's there right now on the course, was there yesterday, did the standard ball in rough video for us. It looked like a lot of clean lies. I'm sure maybe they're not cutting it between now and maybe the rest of the week. So maybe by the time we get to the weekend, it's higher, but it's just not something that is historically played that way either. So this is what I'm trying to get. I want heavy off the tee driver with basically no missed fairway penalty. I'll hit add. I want to look at the last year because I think we'll get a decent sample of what's happened in the last year. You can see I'm getting a big sample over the last 2 years. Oh, not 2 months. I want we'll look last year. Who plays well in these conditions? All right. And let's look at ball striking because that's actually what I think we're trying to get. This is what who can actually gain strokes off the tee and an approach, because that's what these two shots are telling me, right? This is telling me that they're going to be hitting driver and their next shot is coming from either the fairway, because the fairways are big here, or if it comes from the rough, it doesn't really matter as much. So I am really thinking about the first 2 shots here. So that is strokes gained ball striking. Tee to green is going to be right. That's going to capture a little bit more around the green. It doesn't really matter in terms of what happens with what they did off the tee and what the missed fairway penalty is. So I don't really care about tee to green because I don't care about around the green, and the total is going to capture both around the green and putting. So really what I'm looking for here is ball striking under these conditions. Aaron Rye, Doug Gim, Keith Mitchell, JJ Spawn, Steven Yeager are your top 5. And I think that's pretty useful. I think these are also pretty unique to look at the opposite way. Like, who doesn't perform well in these conditions? And you can see I have this up on the screen here, like, Taylor Montgomery, great putter, who's going to pop a little bit later when we do some putting stuff. But Brent Snedeker, Ben Taylor, Martin Trainer, Camilo Villegas, not guys we want to look at when this is the ask. This is the test this week, if you want to call it that. So yeah, interesting to look at the inverse of a search as well. So I'm going to add this. Ball striking, driver heavy, low missed fairway penalty. Just again, shorthand for myself, and that's over the last 12 months. All right, I'm going to reset these filters, pull this back off. Let's see what we want to look at next. So because I have some strokes gained total based off of looking at who played really well the last 6 months, I also have strokes gained total over the last 16 events or 16 rounds. I care a little bit less, and I just captured some ball striking. Typically do a lot more in terms of like approach. You can get into the approach buckets this week if you would like. That's not a thing that I love, and I'll tell you why. I've talked about it often, but again, you're tuning in for the first time. We have the ability here we can look at all these other approach buckets or approach stats, just strokes gained approach, greens and reg, overall proximity, how often guys go for the green. And again, this is a par 5 stat basically. And like, it doesn't really matter this week. Everyone's going for the green, right? Like these par 5s are scoreable. You got to go for it. There's the one really long one. Not a great application for these this week. We also have fairway and rough approach buckets that you can look at. How does someone perform on approach from the fairway? And you can see you get all the proximity buckets. We have a larger dispersion of lower fairway approaches this week, or I guess approaches in general, no matter the rough or the fairway, than normal. We typically have a lot of courses on tour that live in that 150 to 175, 175 to 200, especially the last couple of weeks. Memorial, US Open, a little bit less last week at Travelers. We had some of the shorter approaches. And then we actually have a unique amount of a decent amount of 200 plus this week too. This is here for you to look at. I'm not going to tell you not to add this to your model. I said to each their own, however you want to build it, as we've talked about. My issue with this is when I add it to the model, what I'm actually going to have to do is I have to give it a weight, and I have to give it a weight across the board. Like, so basically you think of, let's see, we just went to Brant Snedeker, right? And Cam Young, right? Or Jake Knapp. Their distance off the tee, even driver heavy, is way, way different. So their number of shots that they're going to take from that proximity range is way different. You could say maybe not, but over the course of 4 rounds, it's going to matter quite a bit. So I just think it's really hard to get a great story from adding a bunch of different proximity buckets. Now, my peers may disagree. I think if you go into some of the other models by other folks on the site, when you go into the View Expert ranking section, as I talked about, I think you're going to see some proximity buckets in there from people. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. It's just not a way that I like to do it because I think it's a little bit noisy. So again, to each their own. We have it here for you. You can look also, you have to determine, well, how frequently is he playing from the rough versus the fairway? So again, another really, to me, it's difficult to weigh properly across the board. I can't weigh it per player. That would take forever. I actually don't have the functionality to do that. I don't know that anyone would want to do it if they had the ability to do it. But like, this is kind of why I don't. But again, it's here for you. If you look at fairway approach or rough approach, you can look at the proximity buckets. And again, this week, if you're doing it, you're more up front. You're more towards the the shorter irons and 200 irons or 200 plus. It's just kind of a unique event, like almost double in terms of where you are from 50 to 125. And then you're way more from a 200 to 250 plus. So you'd want to do the 200 plus buckets. That's kind of where we are. We have a fewer 125 to 200 than we typically have in a tour, the normal tour event. And that's where we typically live. So I'm going to skip that. Again, it's there for you if you'd like. But because I kind of have that captured in some of the other ball striking stuff, strokes gain total stuff. I want scoring, guys. And I want driving distance. So let's add driving distance. We'll go back to off the tee. Some unique stats that you cannot model anywhere else, like total driving, distance from the edge of the fairway, fantastic stats. I think tell a way better story. Not applicable this week, in my opinion, but distance sure is. We'll look here over the last 6 months. I think is probably fair. I think, because again, I like to have the longer view for a lot of these stats, but again, you see so many guys nowadays trying to add speed and, ball speed, club head speed, which you can model and look at here as well. But I just think I want to capture, who's in the last 6 months, where are they at distance wise. So we'll add driving distance last 6 months. All right, now let's get to the scoring, because I think that matters a ton here. I'm gonna look at putting and scoring in a couple different ways. So let's go to scoring. I want to let's just look at overall birdie or better percentage. Who makes birdies? When that's the ask this week is just overall, and then we can start to fit it a little bit into smaller subsets. You can see here Pat Kazire. Let's see, smaller sample than some of his peers, but still not too bad. Again, I'm ruling out, let's say I'll do last 16. Again, you're still gonna have some guys that don't get any any stats here. Again, Thor Bornson, Kelly Kraft is a guy that played very little, that has, performed decently. So he's not going to get captured there because it's a little bit noisy. Neil Shipley, who we've seen perform very well as the, top AM in multiple majors. We don't have a great subset of data for him. Some of the older guys that haven't been around, Jimmy Walker, Jason Duffner, just some other, younger guys that are making their, some of their first appearances here in the year. They're not going to be captured in this, but you can see birdies. I think birdies need to be captured this week here. So we'll look at birdie or better last 6 months. Now let's take a look a little bit more at some of the specific putting stuff. Because again, I want to look at just, different time frames. I want to look at just who has maybe shorter term form putting with the splits that I want, and then maybe just, again, longer term looking at the same stuff. So again, I want to look at the green surfaces and try to get a better understanding of who's performing well on these POA, bent, and POA Triv looks. So all I'm going to do is mess with timeframes. So I'm going to go into my conditions, look at green surfaces. So I mentioned these are, northern POA, not your, that's your California POA. This is your bent POA. That's more, Midwest, northern POA. POA Triv is kind of a hybrid blend, which we've seen quite a bit as of late. So I think this is a good comp to take a look at along with the bent grass. So again, I want to, rule out that like southeastern Bermuda. I don't want to have any of the West Coast POA that we get. This is going to give me, I think, a better sense of what we're looking at here. I'm going to apply this. And I want to look at last 6 months, and I want to look at maybe like the last 2 years. We'll take a look at these samples. So again, this is a look at the rounds played here. I'm getting, 40, 45 for a lot of these guys. I have a minimum round feature of, we'll do 12. I think this is decent. This is last 6 months. Guys have been playing on this surface. And again, you're going to see some really good putters here. Kuchar, S.H. Kim, Tyson Alexander, Taylor Pendrith, Robert McIntyre, Pearson Coody, Aaron Badley, Ben Griffin, who Ron talked to yesterday. He's like, LASIK. He had some sort of eye surgery. His eyes are bugging him a little bit. I don't feel really good about that, but we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Davis Riley, Justin Suh, strokes gained putting over the last 6 months on putting surfaces that closely resemble what we're going to have here in Detroit. I'm going to add this here. Putting, POA, bent, last 6 months. I'm going to keep this same exact subset. And I just want to look at the different range. I want to look at last 2 years, get a longer view, which kind of gives a better understanding of baseline putting, who is really performing in this data set. And let's look at some newer names that were not here before. Matt McNeely jumps up quite a bit. Sam Ryder makes an appearance. Chad Ramey, see Chesson Hadley, Brennan Todd, Peter Malnati. Again, this longer data set going back to 2 years, I think takes out some of the noise and variance over a shorter time frame. I want to capture it because I want to reward players who are performing well now, but I also want to just have an understanding of taking out some of the variance that can come with smaller samples. So this gives me a bigger data set, and I'm going to add this as well. And you can see who's bad in these two, right? Like Kevin Yu, Luke Liss, Wesley Bryant, Jason Duffner, Joel Damon, some guys that don't putt well in this data set. All right, putting last 2 years. And again, we know we have these filters here with POA and bent, which is awesome. All right, that's kind of it. That's what I want to do. I think I want to model this. You can probably do some more stuff. I want to show you this too, because I think this really matters. I'm going to look at it here through the putting lens. I'm going to go up here to the floor and ceiling view. Can't add these stats to a model, but I think it's a really good, especially through a putting lens. This is like when we talk about ceiling. You hear it a lot in like DFS, like, all right, this guy T to green, like Scotty Scheffler was like the old case. I guess Luke Liss would be maybe the poor man Scotty, like, oh man, T to green, just consistent, fantastic. If I can just get one of those spike putting weeks, man, we're cooking with gas. And like, what does that actually mean? Like how frequently does it happen? Like, and so this gives you an idea of flat up strokes gains. You can look at any of the strokes gain buckets and how frequently are they gaining strokes to the field in that subset. Now, and you can look at just, again, flat out how often are they gaining, but then how often are they gaining one? 2, 3, 4, 5 strokes in any of the strokes gained category. So right now, this is looking at putting because I have these green splits. So if I go into putting, I want to see last 2 years, and I search just by gaining it all. Chandler Phillips playing really good golf, by the way. Smaller sample, not small, super small, but not a huge sample. But he's gaining strokes putting 72% of the time on these putting services over the last 2 years. He's gaining one or more strokes 48% of the time. That is outstanding. You go into how often people are gaining one or more. You can see here, Montgomery, Phillips, Thorbornson, Pearson Cootie, Thornborn Olesen, Ryan Fox, Matt Kuchar. These guys are gaining under these splits like at least one stroke putting 40+% of the time. It's outstanding. If we reset and we take all this off in general, you can look at any of these through the lens of spiked putting weeks or spiked tee to green weeks or anything like that. So again, these are just for the strokes gain stats, but how often are they gaining on their peers? So just in general, who's gaining a putting? You can see here, 70% clip to be gaining strokes putting is tops in the field. But let's see who's gaining 2 or more. Again, Thor, my guy, small sample, 20 rounds, but he's gaining 30% of the time. He's gaining at least 2. Look at Taylor Montgomery, fantastic putter. Pearson Cootie, Minwoo Lee, outstanding putter. This is what actually the ceiling looks like. So the application of how often these guys gain, I think is really cool and useful to know. So again, check that out. Again, you can do it for any strokes gain stats through any field. You can get an understanding of like, this is really when you start to dig into what Scheffler's done this year. This is where he starts to like, you really see the separation from his peers. Pretty cool stuff, to be honest. So not going to do that today because he's not here. We got a reprieve from Scotty. So we're going to take it. No Scheffler to rain on our parade here this week. So let's actually run this. Let's see what we get. We'll mess around. We'll see the weights. I have some of the weights, done. So I have an understanding. I mean, again, this is Detroit betting show. All right. Last 6 months. This is just strokes gain total. Last 6 months, we're going to leave it at 12.5. I'm going to go a little bit smaller for last 16, but I want to keep it here and capture. Again, this is just who's coming in playing well in their last, say, 4+ events. Ideally, if you made the cut in all 4 events, this is just your last 4 events. This just gives me really short-term recent form, gets an understanding of how you like to see who's playing well right now. I want to go a little bit bigger on this one. Again, you can click on this little icon, and this will tell you all the filters that we applied. If you didn't make a description note, this is where that is. If you don't make it, click on this button if you forget what it is. Because again, if you didn't, this just tells you all these variations of strokes gain total. That can get a little confusing if you add a lot of stats. So that's why I like to make the note. And again, you need a reminder, click the icon. This is, again, who's performed well last 2 years, and the scoring conditions are easy and very easy. I want to bump that up a little bit. Same thing with driver heavy. So off the tee, driver, and with a low missed fairway penalty. This is strokes gained ball striking. This is capturing approach. And strokes gained off the tee in this scenario, I'm going to give that 15 as well. Driving distance, we know what matters. It is a separator here. I want to give it a bump. That I think is an important stat in terms of really not who's going to perform well, because you're going to find some guys that aren't long off the tee that can hang. We've seen it, but trying to land winners off of this. And I think we're going to find distance being an advantage to actually guys that are in the top 5 and top 10. It's kind of what we're trying to do through here on the betting show. I'm trying to pick winners. All right. Putting stats. I want to look at birdie or better over the last 5 months. I think all these are pretty good. I'm going to keep this here, keep this here. I'm going to maybe knock this down a little bit here. Last 2 years. Actually, let's do the inverse. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to give this the 12.5. And you can see here, this is kind of doing the math for you. So these are my weights. This is up to you how you do it. Again, you can add the same stats as someone and then change the weights. You can so many different ways to land. And you'll see we have some people that do a great job of sharing their models on social. And you could see some of the stuff. I'm surprised. I'm like, hey, how did that guy's nowhere near my top 10. Here he is for someone else. So I think that's just, again, part of the uniqueness of the experience and doing the modeling. So you could save. I'm going to scroll down. You could save as many of these bad boys as you like. There are a ton. Working on making sure that you can have some like evergreen models built, and you just want to run like rolling form and all that stuff. We're making sure that we can do that here. In the past, if you built a model through a specific field, like the field here at the Rocket Mortgage, it wants to run it for that same field. So we're working on that in the background. Another thing I want to show you guys too. This is really, really cool before we move on. You can click on any name here in the rabbit hole. Let me go with someone that's got a little bit of a longer track record. This brings you to their player page. You can see here, you can sort, this is the last 12 months of any of the views. You can get a conditional breakdown. This is, you're looking at putting splits. This is the AM PM splits if you're looking to play showdown or something like that. They're round by round, how frequently they're gaining strokes or losing strokes, how well they play in particular scoring conditions. This is also off of 12 months. Field strength and course length. Again, really interesting. And this is a unique player with a wide array of performances and results. Minwoo Lee is all over the map. And I think that's is kind of indicating that too. Again, rolling 12, 24, 50, 100 in all rounds. You can see here too. So you want to get a sense of short-term form versus their baseline. That's all here for you too. Now you can get into the individual recent performances, the ability to click into only majors. You can search by event here in the search by event box, but you can just see here recently, how the player has played. You can see here, string of top 25s for Minwoo Lee over the last handful of events. He's not done better than that, but he's been, in the mix. And you can scroll back here and see how a player has performed. So hope this is useful for you too. We think it's pretty cool. Again, you can click on any name in the rabbit hole and get there, or you can go ahead and search in for a player here as well. So you just want to see how Scotty has played. I'm going to see his player page. It is, it's alarming. You can see putting splits, and he's really good no matter what we're doing. There's a lot of green. You can see it's kind of been an indicator of the last couple of putting. This is being weighed down massively by his U.S. Open putting. You can see where he lost 1.5 strokes per round at the U.S. Open, which is tough to do, but the finishing position is just absolutely bonkers. But again, this is a great resource if you want to just kind of look at how a player is trending and performing. All right, once I have all my weights set, I give it a name. You hit, I'm going to save this so people can look at it. I'm going to hit save and generate a model, and it's going to spit out what we have here. And I'm going to walk you through who I played. And I think you're going to see some of the guys that I played early in the week because we fire on outrights often. I do on Monday mornings because I think that's time if you have an early lean. I like to build the model over the weekends. So I have an idea of who I'm targeting when the odds board opens on Monday morning. And don't have to worry about steam. Sometimes you get caught on the wrong side of it, I guess. But for the most part, I'm not worried. It's not like DFS ownership. I don't care about who the popular play is. And if anything, maybe us and our subscribers can be part of that market movement. I want to get on the front end of it. And trying to act early, I think, does help you. So top of the model, Taylor Pendrith. Second, Matt McNeely. Keith Mitchell, I expected to model well. He's third. Bobby Mack, fourth. Alex Noren, fifth. Tom Kim, sixth. EVR, seventh. Cam Young, eighth. Bo Hostler, 9. Minwoo Lee, 10. That is the top of your model. You see some other names here that I think are interesting in the top 20 as we scroll down. I think it's an interesting week. And again, you can get an understanding of their ranking in each of these subcategories if you want to take a look at it. And again, a spot where you can look at the inverse of make sure you're like crossing guys off. Part of that, again, is you're going to have really small samples of data for some of these guys or none at all, which makes it a little bit interesting. But when you start to get to the guys that have full data sets and are performing poorly, those are some guys you probably want to avoid this week. So where did I go? Well, I went towards the top of my model, and shortest play for me on the week was my Mav McNeely play 30-1 on Mav. You can see, as I showed earlier, that is now 30s are gone. Playing some really good golf. He's made the cut in 12 straight events. 3 of those have been T9 or better finishes, including his last time out at the Canadian Open. He is one of the best baseline putters in the field. And again, as we touched on, he's getting, you can see here, he's getting credit for that. Birdie or better rate, top 5, 4th in the putting split here, just, long-term putting. Excuse me. He's getting obviously a ton of credit for that. But, and the rest of the game has been pretty good. You see here, look in the last rolling splits we looked at here, he's playing really good golf. So we need to dial in on birdies. Excuse me. Ball striking, as I said, has been much, much better. Added some distance to club head speed this year. Been more consistent with the irons. This is what we need. You look over the last 2 years, we looked at that floor ceiling splits. He's gained 1 or more strokes putting 40.4% of the time. It is second in this field. Great look to finish in the top 20. DraftKings has a minus 105 to T30. I like getting that plus in front of guys in finishing positions, but man, T30 gets you extra spots. And again, when you look at what he's been doing lately, he's been in that mix. Now we have a weaker field. Next here, I'm going to go to the top of the board. Taylor Pendrith, number 1 in the model. 50 was available first thing Monday morning. Now, again, we don't even have a 30 out there now. So do I want to get in on sub 30? Not as much, but at the same time, he's tops in the model. So you can make the case that he's playing the best golf of his career. He won a birdie fest at TPC Craig Ranch in May, and he's played really well. If you eliminate even taking that win out and look at his last 6 starts since, he's finished T25 or better in 5 of those 6 since the win. So obviously a lot of it, he's getting some, kudos for the win and how he played, but every part of his game has been more consistent, and the driver has always been a weapon, but the putter has really turned into a weapon. He's gained strokes putting 16 of 18 starts this year. He's lately been gaining nearly a full stroke per round on the field. He's gained strokes on the green. 75% of his rounds played this year is the highest rate in the field. So a bomb and gouge course, he's the best bomb and gouger in the field. He is what people think Cam Young is. And we're getting still a larger number. So really like it. He's teed it up here in each of the last 2 years. T2, T14 comes in this year with better form. If I'm only making one bet for this event, he is plus 125 on DraftKings to finish in the top 30. So I like him quite a bit. I like getting the 50s against subscribers. Got 50s as well. A little shorter now, but to each their own. See if that's of any interest to you. A little bit further down in the model, 17th is Steven Yeager. You can see here, this is easy scoring conditions. This is ball striking, driver heavy, top 5 in each of those. Driving distance overall, he's great. Now, again, the putting is worrisome, but we've seen spike putting weeks from Steven Yeager. He has probably one of the more impressive wins on tour this season. He went toe-to-toe with Scheffler in the final round of the Houston Open, and he came on top. That very few people have done that this year. He has 2 other top 3 finishes on tour: Torrey Pines, Mexico Open. Driver heavy for the most part. Torrey, the rough's a little bit thicker, but pretty much no missed fairway penalty there, and that's where we're getting in Detroit. The irons have been better. You get a little bit of a rough patch there. He's gained almost a stroke per round on approach last week in Connecticut, which is a wedge fest. Again, similar ass to what we're looking this week too. Again, streaky putter, but what we saw in Mexico and Houston is where he was gaining like 1.5 strokes per round of the green. So we need him to do it here this week. Again, still around 30, a little bit shorter of that in the outright market now, but T30 on DraftKings at plus 105. I like Steven Yeager quite a bit. The next one I went down to another, again, bomb and gouge with the putter. He's a little bit further down. 23 in the model. Ryan Fox. Just bet that one. Still available. 55s in the outright market. He is minus 115 to T40. I think this is an interesting discussion. I don't have a ton of time for it today because I'm approaching an hour and I wanted to keep it to an hour, and I can go long-winded when I'm by myself for some reason. I think typically when you look to back someone from an outright standpoint, there are a couple different buckets. course fit and trending well in terms of what the form ask is. And in most instances, we're looking for both those boxes to be checked. Some guys in general are what I would just call form golfers. And when they get in a run, regardless of what the course is asking them to do, they play good golf. Ryan Fox is that guy. He typically, if you look at the last handful of years, even on the DP World Tour, Ryan Fox is playing well. He will string together really strong performances. And it's kind of what we have going on with him right now. Not a great showing at the U.S. Open, though he made the cut. Before that, though, 3 T7 or better finishes in his previous 6 starts. In Detroit, again, long off the tee, great putter. And that's really what we have for Fox here. You can see driving distance, he is 8th. The putting splits, he is really strong. The recent shorter-term putting splits, even better. You can see he's running around top 25 in both of those. That's what I want this week. So 55-1 here, where Fox can get white hot as he did in Canada and compete. And I think this is a little bit of a weaker field for Foxy, and I think he's very, very interesting. Last play is not going to pop in the model because the sample is really small. I just want to be long on the new guy, Michael Thorbjornsen. Sooner than later, you want to get on board here. He just turned pro last week prior to starting at the Travelers. He was the top-ranked player in the PGA Tour U, coming off of a just really nice amateur career. Stanford alum. Again, has competed and won a majority of the really strong AM events. Had a little bit of a hiccup in terms of health, where he had a back injury, and then since he was kind of out, had an ankle surgery as well. So he just is hey, let me get myself right. So there's a little bit of a hole in terms of where he was playing. But at 17, he made the cut at the 2019 U.S. Open, a T4 at last year's Travelers. Just very, very impressive. As a good field last year too, as a signature event, T4 there. Again, I'm not going to make the Ludwig comparison, but some of these guys that come off of being the top guy on the PGA Tour U hit the ground running, and I think Thor is going to be one of those guys. So he is just like Ludwig. He's a absolute weapon off the tee. He hit it a mile, and we've seen some good putting splits as of late. He really has the whole game, so I'm only going to pay the price. 70-1 is available on FanDuel, -120 for Thor to T40. Just want to get ahead of it. So, yeah, I hope that's a useful process for you guys. And again, take a look. Go through the model. Look at my model. Look at Andy Lack's model. Look at Matt Vicenzi's model. Look at Ron Kloss. See what they're doing. See if it's useful. And then do one of your own. Maybe change the weights. Maybe there's something that I didn't even add. Maybe you want to get into the fairway proximity buckets. Maybe you want to look at something a little bit with field strength, for instance. I think it's, again, a lot of different ways to go ahead and do it. We'll take a look. Let's look at Ron's model. Let's see who's the top of Ron's model based on what he did. Let's take it behind the curtain. Let's see what Kloss did. See if he has any names that are similar to mine in the top 10. He also had Mav and Taylor Pendrith in the top 3 of his model. Telling, and I think useful. Again, some similar names, just different rankings. He's getting Nick Hardy higher in his model. He is weighing the fairway proximity buckets. You can see he's small with how we weighed them, but I like how we disperse the weights. You can see, let's see what else he did. He did some strokes gained total. Let's see what his little subsets are here, filter wise. He was looking at 3 years easy scoring. Great. I looked at 2 years. This is why this is fun. So many ways to do it. He looked at weak fields. Okay. Last 3 years, weak fields. Who's played well? Driving distance last year. Makes sense, right? I looked last 6 months. But again, nothing wrong with that. He's getting, look at this, putting. He's looking at putting ranges. He added bogey avoidance, right? You don't want to have bogeys here. Par 4 scoring, I think, is super important. He added par 5 scoring, but didn't give it any weight. Super cool, useful way to do it. You want to look at a stat. You want to have a tiebreaker for a guy, but you don't want to necessarily give it any weight. Open up the par 5 scoring and take a look. So lots of different ways to go about it. Hope this is a useful. Hi, my son wants to join. He's like, Dad, you've been going for a little bit too long. So hope this is a useful process for you guys. Subscribe to the channel. Get in there. Get in the Discord. We'll be back on Wednesday with the DFS show. And again, Betspertsgolf.com, monthly subs, super duper cheap. There's information in the show notes. You want to get like a cheaper, like quarterly. Again, you get an annual sub. It's not just for the calendar year. It's going to take you for a full 12 months. So you buy an annual subscription now. It's going to take you through next year all the way through. So check it out. Appreciate you hanging out with me this morning. Again, subscribe to the channel. Give me a thumbs up before you take off. We'll see you again on Wednesday for the DFS show.